Hello there learners, welcome back to Learning English is Fun with me, Teacher Fidelis. It has been a while since we had a discussion, or rather discussing how to write an essay using the set text that is the Samaritan. And that is what we shall be looking at today. If you have gone through some of the videos that I've posted, I'm sure that you have seen that we looked at a question based on these texts. And this is what we shall be continuing with. The question at hand today reads, immoral deeds lead to misfortunes. Immoral deeds lead to misfortunes, centering your discussion on Bembe in the play, The Samaritan by John Lara. Write an essay to validate this assertion. That is the question at hand. That is what we shall be looking at today. So I'll start by reminding you what is needed even as you look at how to write this essay. So the first thing we shall look at the keywords in the question that I have just read to you. And maybe if you have a pen and a book, you can write down the question, but I'll still have the question written in the description box for your easy access. So as we look at this question, I want you to take note of these two words, or maybe three words: immoral deeds, that is the first one, and number two, we have misfortunes. So as we attempt to write the introduction, those two words should not be repeated in the introduction that you have. Therefore, you can either look for a paraphrase, you can look for a synonym, look for something that will be giving the same information as in the question without repeating those words. So immoral deeds, what does that mean? When someone does something unethical, when someone does something uncouth, you can say that is something immoral. So either way, those are not the only two words that you can use. You can still come up with other words that you can use to replace immoral deeds. Number two, misfortunes. What are misfortunes? These can be issues someone is facing. These can be problems. These can be, you can also say trouble. So therefore, before you start writing your introduction, so the very first thing you do, you start by giving a paraphrase of immoral deeds lead to misfortunes. Once that is done, you can now contextualize your introduction by mentioning the character and then mentioning the book that you'll be using. So number one, look at the book that we'll be using. This is the Samaritan. So let me try and come up with a paraphrase, and then you can still do the same, and we see how this turns out. So when people engage in uncouth acts, they end up in trouble. Bembe can be used to validate this assertion using the play The Samaritan by John Lara. You could also say something like, when people engage in unethical acts, they end up suffering. Bembe can be used to validate this assertion using the play The Samaritan by John Lara. So that's good enough for introduction. Now, we have different types of introductions that can be used, but specifically when you have a certain character that has been mentioned in the question, ensure that that character appears in your question. What kind of introduction have you come up with? Which words have you used instead of the keywords that we have in the question? Let me know in the comment section. Now, before you start writing, it is important that you come up with an outline. Just get to know, in this particular essay that I'm writing, what do I need? In this case, we have a specific character that we'll be using. So as you work on the outline, think about the things that Bembe has done and how they have led to him getting into trouble. How the things that he has done, uncouth things, unethical things, immoral acts that he has done, how has he ended up suffering because of that? You see, anytime you start writing an essay and you start writing before coming up with the points that you need, more often than not, you might find out that maybe you don't have enough points, and even as you manage the time that you have as you write your essay, you see paper 3 has 3 questions and you need 2.5 hours. You find that students keep writing even after time is up. So you need to plan your time well, and that is the first thing you can do. The introduction is done. You need 4 paragraphs, and in these 4 paragraphs you need to come up with at least 4 points that answer this question. Before we look at the outline and the 4 things that Bembe has done, it is important to remember that in any paragraph you need to focus on the topic sentence, and this topic sentence answers the question at hand. Give background information. If, for example, I say that Bembe is corrupt, how does he end up suffering because of this corruption? Therefore, in my topic sentence, I should answer the question by highlighting specifically what Bembe does and how he ends up in trouble because of that. Once you're done with the background information, who is Bembe and how do we find him in trouble, or what do we find him doing, give an illustration. Give an illustration. What specifically does he do? For example, now when I mentioned that Bembe is corrupt, yes he is, but specifically what does he do? Is he the one asking people for bribes? Is he, using money meant for maybe things in the municipality? What specifically does he do? This information should appear as it is in the text, so that you don't make up something. You should use information as given in the text. And lastly, you should have a clincher. The clincher kind of summarizes the paragraph by denoting that, okay, we have seen this man is doing ABCD, and in fact it is true, using the illustration given, he has ended up in trouble. Now for the 4 paragraphs, we can look at 4 things that Bembe has done, and then after that we shall look at every paragraph and see what is needed. Number 1, you can talk about Bembe and corruption. So corruption in this case will be the immoral deed, the uncouth act that he has. And what happens to Bembe? Because of the corruption, he ends up, you can talk about him ending up being arrested by Tajo. And then now the information about how he gets all these should appear in the background information and the illustration. Number 2, you can talk about intimidation. Bembe uses what he has, his position in Maracas municipality, to intimidate Miss Nicole. Why is he intimidating her? Because she has refused to stop supporting the Samaritan app. Those are 2 points. Point number 3, you can use something like the ghetto boys. This is a leader who is supposed to protect the people, but instead of protecting the people, he uses his position to bring in a gang that actually attacks people and gives people a bad time, so to speak. And lastly, you can use Bembe and the kind of support he gives Mosi towards making sure that the Samaritan app is banned. And the moment people say this lobby group that says because Bembe has built his home and the Madingo Golf Club on the university's land, they should be taken away. And this now gives him the power, or maybe the push. Yeah, it gives him the push to work towards closing this app that is giving him a lot of trouble. Now we shall start with the first one, and this is Bembe versus corruption. So for our topic sentence, look at the immoral thing that Bembe does and how he ends up in trouble. So you can come up with a topic sentence such as Bembe uses the police inspectorate as his personal outfit to collect bribes that he uses to build his home, but he ends up losing it. Using that particular topic sentence, Bembe using the police inspectorate as his outfit to collect bribes. That is an immoral deed. That is something unethical. How does it affect him negatively? It affects him because he ends up losing his home. So that topic sentence, even as the examiner, the teacher looks at your work, they will know exactly what to expect. What other topic sentence can you come up with? Looking at Bembe versus the corruption, the whole corruption saga. Write it down and we continue. Now we need to know who Bembe is. Bembe is the Inspector General of the Police in Maracas Municipality. And then his main job, what does he do as the inspector? His main job is to enforce law and order. But does he do it? He doesn't. So at that point now, that's where we go back to getting some information that supports the fact that he is a corrupt person. But before we get to know about this corruption, where does all this come from? It comes from the fact that as he meets with the other leaders, then he is informed that the Caribbean Watch, this is a newspaper in Maracas Municipality, he is informed that some information has been shared from the Samaritan app, and then the newspaper has picked this information and published. What information is this? You have to be specific and highlight it. The information is Bembe has built his home and the Madingo Golf Club on the university land. Which university, you ask? The university is Maracas University. Where did he get the money to build these two? Now, this is where again you give an illustration of what he does. And you could say something like, first off, the Madingo Golf Club is nicknamed the Motorist Highway Hotel. Why is this? Bembe uses the police to wake up early, not to enforce law and order, but to collect bribes. And then he uses that money to go and build the two. So there's a lobby group that is asking Bembe to give back the land belonging to the Maracas University. Now, when Bembe gets to hear of this, he's worried, and this is where his wars or his troubles start. First off, he's afraid of going to Baneta Express prison. Why is this? He says that he has diabetes, and he's very sure that he cannot last a week in the prison. Away from that, he gets very agitated or worried, or rather worried. Could say he's worried. He tells Mosi that with his diabetes, he thinks he will die soon if he does not get if he loses his home. He thinks that he won't survive because he says that he has used all his life savings. You see, these are some of the issues, the trouble, the suffering that he goes through. In the clincher, then, you can note that Bembe, because of his uncouth acts, end up being arrested by Tajo, or you could say because of his immoral acts, Bembe ends up going through a lot of turmoil and loss. And with that, you'll have your paragraph 1. Again, another thing to note, your first paragraph doesn't have to be the paragraph that I have mentioned. Look at what you feel confident in. What do you feel comfortable in? Which point can you give all the information without any trouble? That should be your first point. Point number 2, we could look at how Bembe intimidates Miss Nicole. Look at the intimidation. How is Bembe intimidating Miss Nicole? So first off, again, you start with the topic sentence and you mention what he does. And you see there's a part in the book where Bembe is meeting with Mosi. Mosi, of course, is afraid of the Samaritan app because it is exposing all the leaders, including him. And therefore, he goes to some of his allies, including Bembe, to help him come up with something to stop the Samaritan app. And Bembe tells Mosi, don't worry about the teacher. I have a way of making people switch allegiances. And this is now where he comes up with some accusations. He fabricates some accusations against Miss Nicole. The first one is that she stole the school generator. And number 2, that her phone signal was found in a murder site. So for this particular one, then we will need to see that aspect of intimidation in the topic sentence. So you could say something like, Bembe uses his position to intimidate Miss Nicole, but he ends up getting arrested by Tajo. Already now, we know, as you write, you'll give us some information about the intimidation. Then, once he accuses her of those 2 things, they must appear in the background information or in the illustration that you'll give. She's arrested. Actually, you could start by saying that Bembe goes to school, that is Sagrada High School, asks to speak to Miss Nicole. He tells her that she needs to join him or accompany him to the police station. So Bembe starts by going to Sagrada High School. Then Miss Nicole wonders what's going on, and then at this point Bembe tells her that she needs to accompany him to the police station. She then asks, why am I going to the police station? And that is where now Bembe talks about the 2 things, her stealing the school generator and her phone signal being found in a murder site. She's arrested, but then the people come up and say that the teacher is innocent, and this is taken to court and she is released. Then at this point now, how do we now see Bembe suffering? Tajo comes in and arrests. You see, these are towards the end of the text. We see leaders going to Sagrada High School because nothing is working. They try and talk to Miss Nicole. They promise to give her a job in the municipal council. And at that point, that is where we see Tajo coming into the school and arresting the leaders. Number 3, you can talk about the ghetto boys. That is your point number 3, your paragraph number 3, ghetto boys. This is a leader. This is the inspectorate of the police force. He's supposed to enforce law and order, but he doesn't. What does he do? He has a gun. Ghetto boys, make sure that you're writing the correct spelling. What does this gang do? They terrorize members of Maracas municipality. You could start by highlighting the meeting he has with Mosi. And you see, Mosi is trying to stop Seymour and Ted from getting to the municipal headquarters because they were planning to have a rally that would help them pass a vote of no confidence against Mosi. But Mosi, as the mayor of Maracas municipality, does not want this to happen. So what does he do? He calls his ally Bembe and asks him, what can I do? And at this point now, you could talk about 2 things. Misusing the police force at that point, because he says, don't worry about it, I'll bring in the ghetto boys. They will stop people from going to the municipal headquarters. At the same time, he promises to bring undercover police. Okay. And then he tells Mosi, as he brings the Red Eagle network, they should have white ribbons for the police to be able to identify them easily. Now, away from this particular incident, you can talk about the ghetto boys terrorizing members of the municipality. And again, as you get to the clincher, ensure that you showcase how he suffers. And at the end of the day, you can still talk about him not getting away with what he does because he gets arrested. Point number 4, you can talk about Bembe stopping the Samaritan app. The moment he gets to know that it is the Samaritan app that has highlighted that his home and the Madingo Golf Club are built on the Maracas University's land, he's looking forward to banning the app himself. He starts by telling Mosi and Harvester that they can threaten the news reporters. This way, the news reporters will be afraid of sharing information that they get from the app. Number 2, he says that they can enforce, he can come up with a law a bylaw and then ensure that this bylaw is passed by the municipal council, and then he will enforce it. He will be the one to enforce the bylaw that will be passed. And using that, the Samaritan app will be banned. Bembe cannot allow the Samaritan app to take away everything that he purports to have worked hard for. So for that particular point, you can talk about Bembe trying to bring down the Samaritan app. Again, have a clincher for that particular paragraph. Lastly, you must have a conclusion. So we started with talking about an introduction. We have our 4 points: having a topic sentence, background information, an illustration, and a clincher. And finally, as you come to the end of your essay, ensure that you have a conclusion. Now, a few things to note. You see the keywords we highlighted at the beginning of our writing: immoral deeds, misfortunes. Don't repeat those words as you come up with your conclusion. Come up with other words, or you could use whatever you used in your introduction. Don't add any new information. Maybe you remember that Bembe did something. Don't add that in your conclusion. And a conclusion can be as simple as just a sentence or two. Another thing, ensure that you start with words such as in summary, to summarize, to sum up, in conclusion, to conclude, to showcase that this is actually a conclusion. So you could say something like, in conclusion, it is worth noting that engaging in misdeeds only leads to tribulations. And you're as good as done. Then a reminder that for you to get the 2 marks in the conclusion, your conclusion has to be valid, and then the number of marks you get in the body should be more than 6 for you to get the 2 marks. So yeah, that is the question, and we are done with the discussion. In case there's any other question that you'd want us to look at, let me know in the comment section. Until next time, it's a goodbye from me. Bye.